Hello, everyone. This is Andrea Marcus. I apologize that my video isn't on. I'm having some internet troubles, so I do apologize, but thank you so much for joining us. This is just going to be kind of an informal, help you out kind of thing. Thank you so much to Tammy Jones for offering to walk us through some of the key takeaways for the expense management, and I will let her just get going.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. I was going to just share my screen here. Let's see here. Can everybody see that? Yeah, awesome. So I was just telling the ladies, I didn't realize kind of what I may have gotten myself into. So full disclosure, we are definitely not experts, but have been working with the expense management module probably for about 2 years now. And have, I'm sure, run into many of the challenges that you all have experienced based on just some of the brief feedback that I saw. Please, I didn't kind of do we're using it, how we set it up, and then maybe just open it up for questions, and then through kind of group dialogue, see where we land. Okay. So the keys kind of with the setups, and I will share this out, and if for those that may not have had it already, this was from to manage expenses. Like I said, we've been using it for about 2 years. So we were kind of early adopters, frankly, before much of this training was even available. We were working with a consultant because we had adopted the FENXT platform, and it was kind of our logical next step. I think the key kind of piece to the setup that kind of was our initial hang up was setting up the security platform. And there's a nice little slide here. Oh, it might not be on this one. Yeah, that kind of talks about the different users. Initially, one of the things that really kind of was a challenge for us, and it was not clear, was the security setups, and that you had to do that in the database, and you had to initiate the web portal and the web invoicing. And inevitably, if that is not set up from the get-go, your users will have issues. The second piece that we do is with regard to the delegates. So when we set up our users, let me go here now. So is everybody kind of seeing now our settings for our approval rules? Shmuels, can you tell me if yes or no? Just a thumbs up so I can see.
No, we still see this, the expense management layout from the slideshow.
Okay, let's see here. Pull that over. I'm going to stop that share. And let me just pick this. Okay. So you should be able to see our treasury kind of setup and how we set up our platform. So you have the option to set it up as, kind of a school master account, or based on the individual credit card users. We chose the individual credit card users. It was a far more effective way for us to source and reconcile the transactions. Another thing in the setup, so it took us a while as well to kind of navigate, was the delegate function and that flow of transactions. And so you can see here, we're looking at Brianna, our enrollment management director's account. And what this is showing in the delegates is that both Brianna and Linda receive all of the downloaded transactions. And Linda is actually our AP manager. And so one of the things that we figured out is inevitably, if we had somebody that was out, or frankly, if we had somebody separate, but there were still transactions that were processing through their card, you can't see them if they are only associated with that user. So one of the workarounds that we ultimately kind of developed via Blackbaud was to ensure that your AP manager is listed on a delegate of all of your transaction or all your and push through approval process. And we always could kind of go through and identify any that were hung up, and she had visibility. So that was kind of one real key that really helped us in the long run, especially during the summer months. If we saw something for a division head that was out of the office for July, it was easy for her to kind of reach out and say, hey, I need you to get these pushed through. In terms of kind of the accounting kind of structure that we use, and again, we were early, so I'm not suggesting this is best practice at all, but in our accounts, look here so you guys can see. We set up a new liability account that we dump all the transactions into. And so the flow of our transactions this is our kind of monthly flow. When we receive the invoice statement, we use American Express purchasing cards. So when we receive those statements, in order to not incur any late fees, we treat those like a traditional invoice. Our AP manager will receive those. She will post those for payment to the specific American Express user's account. Instead of posting those to expense, because clearly we're going to navigate all the expense pieces through the expense management module, we set up a credit card liability account. We actually use that as our kind of holding ground, if you will. So when we post that through our AP journal, the debit's actually going to our credit card liability account. We then go ahead and we'll pay that as we would a traditional invoice. And then as those kind of manage expense downloads are happening, they don't post to the ledger until they're actually approved and then posted through the subledger. But as they navigate to the appropriate expense account, we then offset that against that credit card liability account. So we always are keeping those two account balances in sync. And that has worked really well for us. We do like a weekly download of the transactions. Our AP manager will notify all of our credit card account holders that she has done a download. They also will be notified. And then we just really are using the module to run through our approval criteria. In terms of the settings, we set up based on our different departments to kind of allow for our different approvals. Blackbaud does have the option to do self-approval. So, again, going back to the enrollment manager, we, like many organizations who are still using a paper process, we just kind of replaced our paper. So the individuals have self-approval up till 5,000. At 5,000 and above, we require dual approvals. You can see here for now, I've been looking at most of the transactions, again, just as we've been kind of refining our process, and we'll be transitioning them to self-approvals here in the future. But the system works great. It notifies the appropriate approvers when they need to log in and do an approval. We set up all of our users with default, their default approval rule. And then you'll see here in the distribution, we use a organization, division, and then department structure along then with our main account. And you can see here by using those kind of I don't know what we call those, the stars, if you will. What happens then when Brianna as the delegate receives her transactions, because of her user profile, it will always default to the division or the organization, the division in her department, which happens to be 13, along with our main account. Which really streamlines their kind of expense allocations. We've set up a lot of expense categories. So for example, with Brianna, let's say she was purchasing, a food and kitchen supply, it would default to her division and department, and then associate the appropriate main account as part of the processing. I will say the one kind of challenge that we've had, and this is why I've been kind of looking at all the transactions, we do have some delegates that have responsibility for different departments. So for example, my administrative assistant supports myself and the head of school, and we have different department and business rules. The ideal would be for her, to be able to select based on the approval rule, what that designated division and department flow would be, but it doesn't work that way. It only allows you to set up a user with one kind of preset allocation. And so we do have to do some overriding of the GLs, but in a very kind of limited capacity. Trying to think if there's any kind of other. So what will happen here in the expense management screen, so you can see for individuals that are delegates, this is where all of their transactions will land. And when they go to work with my charges, I'm not a delegate for anyone, but this is where everything would land and they would start processing. For myself, so I received an email, you can kind of do it to process end of night or as of. So it's telling me that I have pending charges to review. And you can see kind of that flow. If something needs to be overridden, I can go to view the distribution, change what needs to be changes, or if it needs to be broken out and distributed, across multiple departments, you can do that. And the other piece too that has kind of really been helpful for us is the history of changes. Sometimes when we were kind of early on trying to figure out like where were transactions. We didn't have all of the delegates set up properly. We really had to rely on kind of where was the history of changes to even know who was the last user associated with the transaction and where was it still sitting. But like I said, if you have your AP manager set up as a delegate for all, she'll always be able to navigate that and see where transactions are, and she can change based on the user. So she can look at all 10 of our credit card holders and understand where the transaction is. I think another thing that we do here, again, just to ensure that the transactions stay clean because of we're using the credit card liability account. The vendor that we use for every single managed expense is that credit card holder. So for example, if I purchase from Amazon with my American Express, every time my delegate is processing those transactions, the vendor is always my American Express account, not Amazon. And again, that allows us to keep all of those transactions in sync. So that's kind of the high level that I have. Oh yeah, I was hoping Michelle was going to be on because I know she's another super user here. So Michelle, feel free to kind of add in, you know,
Hi,
your,
Tammy.
hey, good. I was meaning to text.
Yeah, sorry, I was a few minutes late, but I wanted to hopefully jump in here because I've been doing a lot of this work lately. So I hopefully can help some people.
Yeah, that is awesome. So go ahead and feel free to kind of expand on your comment there.
Yeah, so what I was saying is specifically at Brandeis, where I'm working right now, we just set up expense management for them. And you are able to assign, like some people can be a part of several approval rule setups, you know, and so when they go to submit an expense, there's a drop down and they can so if they're acting in the capacity of enrollment management for that expense, they can pick enrollment management approval rule. Mm-hmm. Or say they're part of the business office also, they can, in that drop down, they can select business office. So the good part is you can have people who are a part of a couple different groups, you know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe your head of school can approve every group, you know, or whatever your rules might be. So that's
a great point. So here I'm showing, you know, we have kind of many of the same players that are involved in the approval rules, but Michelle makes a great point. So for my assistant, for example, if she is processing something for me or Jeff, or even our operations director, she will change the approval rule so it will flow through, you know, the proper kind of chain of command.
Yeah, and Tammy, maybe you can show everybody like on the like as if you were submitting an expense. You know, like if you go to manage expenses and like you just do new request, like up in the right there. Like the new request, see a plus sign next to under my invoice requests.
Oh, you mean because we are using invoices too.
Yeah. So like that approval rule.
Yeah, here's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you can hit that drop down and you can select, like, obviously you're probably an administrator, so you have access to all of them, but for you can assign a default to everybody, like, so at least it'll, like, if you're just advancement, it'll just always default to advancement.
Right. So I'm just going to answer some of the questions coming through on chat here. So how do you guys use project codes feature? We actually are not using project codes here. I don't know if you are, Michelle.
No, not for expenses.
I mean, what we are using, and let me go back and see if I can show you through an approval. We use more kind of student activity. So we use more the T codes. Like, so for example, if, and you can see here, so we have a student activity program, and then we have a number of drop downs, school kind of fundraiser or fundraising. So for example, if we're holding some kind of event, and I'll use annual gala as an example, and we want to be able to track kind of uniquely to that event, but hey, what was our food cost, what may have been some of our ad or PR, that's how we're using T codes as a way to aggregate kind of across our various P&L lines, but unique to an event or program. Let's see, another question is, by making your vendor the credit card, how do you search vendors once it is in the GL? So that's a limitation, Taryn. You would have to go back. I mean, so the other thing with, the manage expense portal is through accounts payable, we manage all the user accesses. So the user login passwords for American Express or any of our aggregated kind of online purchasers like Amazon, for example. And that becomes important because the expense management module essentially is just a front-end GUI that just lands all of those transactions directly from Amex into your portal. And so if you have to go back and look at the detail, you could go through, you're going to have to go back and look in American Express. Alternatively, you have a couple of open fields as part of your expense management, and you could make it a business kind of process to always include your vendor, as part of the description or, as part of the detail. But yes, you will not be able to search because technically the vendor wasn't, Amazon in this case, because we processed it through American Express. Let's see here. Can the cardholders have limited access to just upload receipts and invoices for each charge? Chelsea, if you could just jump on and kind of expand. I'm not sure I understand your question entirely. But as a delegate, essentially, you only have the capacity. We've set it up that they only have the capacity to upload and essentially kind of do the work that used to be managed in your AP departments, in that they are kind of explaining and choosing the expense allocation, but currently none of our delegates have approval. So we require that someone else actually reviews that transaction and approves it before it's moved on to accounts payable for the final approval and a posting. So Janet is commenting that they use project codes to designate funding sources on all income and expense entries, but they do not use the expense reporting module. If you're interested, you can contact Janet Kohler directly at chaminade.org. And everybody can see the chat, right, guys? Yeah, looks like it. Do you use purchase orders? And if so, So that's kind of where we are right now, Debbie. Yes, we have historically used purchase orders. I've been kind of continuing on with this mantra to try to eliminate paper, where we can. And so, as Michelle was kind of showing, we have now been using the invoice kind of portal to start to replace kind of purchase orders, if you will, and invoicing. And, again, it's still early. I mean, it works very nicely for reimbursement purposes. But, for purchase order, for those transactions that are ongoing, there's still some work to be done there. I don't know, Michelle, are you guys using?
Yeah, so we are using the expense in my invoice section. So we're having department managers upload and select the expense category. Say, our IT director has a bill from Apple. He purchased computers or whatever. We're actually using the expense. We're using it. Our goal is to use it for all. Instead of people handing AP like an approved bill to pay, we're going to use the system to electronically upload and approve invoices for payment. Now, I've added our AP person as one of the approvers, so she can review like the backup and the coding.
Yes.
So she's one of our, string of people that quote unquote approve an invoice for, in the system. So we are basically taking this and hopefully we're kind of rolling it out with like a small group at a time.
Yeah.
Just to not overwhelm our AP person,
That's exactly how we did it.
Yeah. Like like I've taken like the senior leadership departments and I'm having them use it. And then, but slowly, like we'll have it go to like the teachers and to, to everybody. But I'm kind of like, just, so we can work out the kinks. Everybody is up, like, like I said, our senior leadership departments are uploading the items that they're approving for payment through the electronic system.
Right.
The only downside, and you might have talked about this, Tammy, is we don't want people creating a vendor, which is a choice in the system. We don't want them creating vendors. So the drawback is if it's a new vendor, they have to contact like our AP person to create a new vendor.
And see, we're doing it differently in that, like I'm on a transaction here and it's for our athletic director. And so, as I said, we are doing everything, based on paying American Express as opposed to having it post to the vendor. The other thing, Michelle was commenting on the approvals. We initially did the same thing, Michelle. We initially had our accounts payable manager set up in our settings as kind of one of the steps. But over time, we actually took her out because the flow here is, it's kind of like the way we're looking at it is, these are the individuals who are approving that, yes, this was an authorized budget expense. Then after it goes through this flow, it will land in our payables kind of bucket, and she will see those as they're approved. And then she will process them exactly as Michelle said. She ultimately then is looking to ensure, all the internal controls are met, the proper documentation is there, and kicks back anything, that needs be. And, so a little bit different in that kind of sense.
And yeah, and then like with the credit cards, like we'll see how it goes. Unfortunately, our merchant wouldn't sync with the system, so we had to open new credit cards. So I don't have it yet. But our goal is to assign vendors to the credit cards. We'll see how it goes. I want to kind of start out that way.
Yeah.
it might be too unwieldy, we'll see. Because like I said, I only want AP creating vendors, not
Yeah,
the
agreed.
card holders.
Mhm.
So, we'll kind of see how it goes.
And we did this slow roll as to, we started off kind of myself in the head, so I could kind of control. We expanded out, to my tech and facilities folks, and we brought on our divisions last because they are high volume users. We wanted to ensure that we had the kinks worked out because frankly, they have the least amount of patience, and we wanted to ensure it was very streamlined before we got them on board.
Mhm.
Let's see, Jill, so create and attribute AP called credit card vendor and then allow credit to assign vendor name in the attribute field. Yeah, exactly. As Jill says, does Blackbaud have a manager?
Can I just make maybe a small comment?
Yeah, feel free.
With regards to the merchant to whom the credit card payment actually went to, I noticed that it does in fact download that merchant name with each item.
Oh,
And you can see over here, well, you can't see what I'm seeing. I mean, on the left side of the screen that's now up, you can see that the credit card, the merchant to whom the payment went, shows up on each item. Amazon, Amazon.com, Dick's Clothing. So if that's what Jill is asking about, I think you can actually utilize this and you can filter it. And then you can actually print it. There's a little cute little sheet with an X in the middle of it that allows you to, I believe, print that which you filtered. So it's not as robust as being able to filter and sort by the other fields that are readily available, like the amount or the date. But that should allow you some analytical capability and isolation capability without necessarily having to create a sort of a special attribute or a user-defined field.
Great. Thanks, Shmuley. So John's asking about the invoice management. So yes, John, I mean, that is what they call my invoice requests. And again, we have used it for reimbursement. We now, at the start of this fiscal year, are trying to use that for all kind of invoice so we can push it back through our approval process. And since it is the same kind of system effectively, I think your users ultimately will be pretty pleased with it. The system really is pretty intuitive to work with. And the only difference is if they're, uploading a copy of an invoice, and to Michelle's point, the vendor would be different. So if you're working with invoices, then you are searching for a vendor. In our case, if you're working with the expense management credit card side, we default to our P card holder as the dedicated vendor.
So I guess my thing is that I want invoices to come in and get routed through the system to individuals based on who they are. And I know there's some work involved to get that done so that it can get the work, it can have the rules and workflow that we have for expense reimbursement, which is not just for people with purchasing cards, but for anyone who has expenses, whether they have them on their personal or corporate card. And what's interesting is when I talked to the Blackbaud rep, he said, no, we don't really have an invoice system. And it seems to me that there is one, although I'm not sure how robust it is.
Yeah.
I
would say, oh, sorry, Michelle. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, we are using it as an invoice system. Like
Same.
Our goal is by the end of the, first quarter is our AP person will basically not be entering anything anymore.
Same.
So we are using it, as a full-blown system. Whether an assistant enters the bill that then gets routed to their department head to approve, or if a teacher enters something that it then goes to their department head to approve. That's our goal, is to use the system entirely electronically without paper flowing at all.
Yeah, it is the same approval rules, John, whether you're using the credit card side or the invoice side. So we set it up that way. And yeah, it works out great. I mean, in fact, to your point, what happens often is an invoice obviously lands, with our AP manager. Now she can upload it, select the approval rule, i.e. the department that needs to now be responsible for reviewing it. And that's working out so far pretty well.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I was going to say that as well, Tammy. Like, so if you're, say all your bills go to your AP person, and then they get routed for approval, your AP person would basically be using the module. Is it effective for them? And it probably is a little bit more time consuming for them to do it this way, but it could be done that way. But like we're at Brandeis, like the department heads actually receive the bill themselves, that then they will so the AP person isn't actually doing all the work.
And we have both.
People. Yeah.
We have both. It's just like sometimes things will land directly with AP, and then historically, then we were, she was sitting on it trying to route to get it, approved, and it was kind of outside the system. And at least now she can get it in the system and routed, electronically. And to your point, our goal is, hey, yeah, we want it to be landing in the departments, having them upload it and push it through, but it just gives us some more convenience.
yeah, I mean, I think the issue for us, and I'm sure it occurs elsewhere, is that there are some people where invoices arrive and they just sit there.
Sit on them, yes.
And that's one of the things I'd love to address, but it doesn't sound like there's a portal where invoices can get sent into the Blackboard invoice system for you to then route. It has to be
not really. Yeah, not really. I mean, you at least have to kind of have, who's this invoice associated with, and so you can establish the approval role.
Okay, thank you.
You could have somebody routing those, whether it's your AP person or an assistant or whoever, if you need to get something approved, like you could route it, and it would definitely go through the electronic process.
So Chelsea, I wonder if the cardholders can have their own user account where they can be given access to upload documents for charges instead of. Yes, this is what that system does. So our cardholders, who we kind of refer to as delegates, are set up with the account, and when our AP manager kind of downloads the transaction, it's seconds, and then they land in their kind of credit card transaction account to work through, and then defaults to whatever approval rule. Have you had issues with uploading Amex duplicate charges missing? No, I don't believe. Oh, have we? Shmuley, did we? Or we may have had some kind of.
But we had a few, not a large majority, not a large percentage by any means, but once or twice.
Yeah, and
I have heard. I think Milken, I was talking to her. They had some duplicates. I think.
Yeah, Michelle, I'm the one who asked the question.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm like, I've heard of that before.
But I'm just asking Tammy because we have ours are, we also use Amex. So that was one of our issues, is there were a lot of duplicates or missing transactions. And I think one of the issues is also checking that the user flags that sometimes they're not. They're uploading things twice, and so that was a problem.
That's why we kind of have our thing said. We had when before we took control of username and password, we had a few issues where users would change their passwords or credentials. And as soon as that happens, it obviously breaks the link. Or, you know, there could be like like when you then reestablish it, if any transactions happen before that, then they're not going to download, right? So I think most of our issues were frankly because we were not controlling those kind of user accesses. And once we did, to my knowledge, we haven't had any further issues.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, since I'm the one who asked this question in the first place about expense management, really, like, we were ready to throw in the towel a couple of times, and it really is, the key is setting it up properly and understanding the approval rules and understanding the various things, because when we first were presented this by Blackboard, you're given certain things, but until you actually go in and do it and you see what's happening, and that's where we were hitting a brick wall constantly with trying to get Blackboard to say, to explain, well, if you do it differently, or if your approval rules are different, or, you know, your vendors, all these things that you're telling us, and Michelle graciously helped us yesterday. It really makes a difference to have it set up, and I will say we're going to give it another shot and set up. And one thing that I would recommend that we probably went all into quickly, but what you're recommending is taking a small group and doing it like that first is probably the better way to do it as well.
Yeah. And I can tell you, we had probably changed our approval flow 2 or 3 times until it really kind of landed with us as well. Which just through some trial and error. And like I said, we had, for example, our facilities director had left, brought a new one on, and then we realized, oh, wow, now we have all these transactions sitting on this account access to. But yeah, definitely the trial and error has worked well, but I feel like we've got a good grasp now.
I'm curious, has anybody on this Zoom, because we just signed up to get the purchase cards through Blackbaud so we don't have to go through Yodlee, because our vendor wasn't working at all anyways, so we had to switch anyways. I'm curious if anybody is using the Blackbaud purchase cards and if they find it supposedly it's supposed to go way smoother because you don't have to go through that third-party Yodlee app, that integrates with the downloads of the credit card transactions. So if anybody has used it, maybe speak up in the chat. I'd be curious to talk to you.
I can say, for us, the Yodlee has really been a non-issue. I mean, yeah, if your vendor doesn't accept it, that's obviously problematic. But that has been, a really kind of clean process for us. Like I said, as long as you're controlling kind of the user access, it will show if you have a broken link, it will show you that, hey, there's a problem. You need to go and review it. You can control, we had a director leave, so you can kind of let those transactions kind of clear out and then, just kind of inactivate the card. I saw a question with respect to integration with QuickBooks, and, I don't know that question. That would probably be a Blackbaud.
I think in terms of QuickBooks, this module really comes with Financial Edge. If you use QuickBooks, it's probably like not cost effective to I don't even know if they just sell this module on its own.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do. and there are other products like Expensify, or I don't know, there's some other ones
Yeah.
that might
Conquer, yeah,
integrate
yeah.
with QuickBooks.
A lot of people who have QuickBooks use Bill.com, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Michelle, any kind of parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think, one thing I was talking to the Milken gang yesterday about this. Blackbaud is not helpful at all.
Right.
And trust me, I've tried, because
This is my shocked face.
yeah, I try to get in their ear about it, but it's like I want to go run their business for them, but they won't let me. But so like, feel free if anybody wants to email me, I'll put my email in here. Like, I just like have kind of gotten this down because I happen to have done it for now like 3 different schools or one of them's a nonprofit, but I just have kind of figured out my own way to get it to work, out of trial and error. So I'm happy to share with anybody.
Awesome. And likewise, I am as well. I'm happy to anybody who wants, like I said, I have kind of Blackbaud, kind of some training that they've done. But yeah, to Michelle's point, it really does kind of require you to kind of sit back and track the transactions to make sure they're hitting your ledgers properly, that you feel like you have good visibility, and then bring on your additional users as you go. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Tammy, Michelle. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's so generous.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.